Hi friends, welcome back. So I want to go over what's going on in the markets today and go over some comments from the community because we've got a great one. And let's jump right in. So first, this is coming from Mojo Mariposa, and they write, "This is a clown car full of fools voted in by fools to bleed out whatever is left of a dying empire." And yes, I would agree. We have some crazy fools running the show. But hey, if you want to track the clown car, you're in the right community to do that. This is also coming from R Kabasa. They say, felon Trump is making the market unstable. They're worried about Matt being AG. That's referring to Matt Gaetz, and it's kind of a strange pick for Attorney General, but we'll keep tracking on that one. That is a huge issue. Future tariffs are an issue. Yes, we'll be watching that one as well, and I got some updates on that. RK Kabasa also says, the car industry has been going down for the last couple of years. They need to change their business model. I want to look at a truck that I bought about 6 years ago, and it's $80,000. I can't afford that. And guys, whenever I see the price of new vehicles, I'm just like, who's buying this stuff and who's getting loans for this crazy stuff? So all these things are tracking, and let's take a look at some more comments here. This is coming from Claus. Bohm Claus says, Trump threat of wholesale tariffs is tanking the market, not the Fed. I would actually argue it's both. That's why these markets are basically crazy and volatile right now, because we're dealing with more than one thing. Here's another comment. We have it from Malgron. Malgron says, I never friended Elon on Twitter, but after a recent login, he was first in my feed, and a friend on most of my feed were his tweets. I had to remove friend and block him just to see stories from people I actually follow. And I had the same experience also with Twitter. I would get notifications from Elon. I wasn't following him. I'm not his friend. Like, I don't want to see this stuff, and yet you still keep seeing things popping up from him. But that sort of shows the world that we're in right now. Even if you don't want to know about Elon, he forces his views on you, and it always is conspiracy theories and that kind of stuff. This is also coming from Pipestone67. They say here, rules and regulations were created for chumps, not the Trumps. They are a lawless mob. And unfortunately, that is going to be the problem going forward is they actually want, this is the Trump administration, we'll talk about it, they actually want to deregulate as many things as possible. And then the regulations that are in place basically are for you to follow, but not necessarily for them. Remember, Trump is immune as long as is presidential official business. That's how they got a Supreme Court ruling in his favor. So we'll see if that and what plays out as he takes advantage of that sort of ruling on his side. This is coming from Arturo Garza ID. Arturo writes, they're selling some bumper stickers for Tesla owners on Amazon that say, I bought this before Elon went crazy. And another person replies, Don Carlo says, I bought this before we knew the doors don't open when the car burns. Again, this is referring to bumper stickers on Amazon. We also have a comment here coming from Stampede. Stampede writes, I'm in infrastructure design. This guy is an absolute idiot. There's no way private companies can compete with publicly produced large-scale engineering. In cases where it is possible, those are subbed out, but this guy is off the map, wrong about what he's saying. And that's referring to Bill Ackman. I showed you guys a clip of that just a couple days ago. Basically, is saying, hey, we got to privatize everything, and essentially justifying why we'd want to fire a bunch of employees, and then essentially saying, hey, it would be better. This person, Stampede, is saying, no, it would not. I agree with Stampede. There's some things that don't need to be privatized. In fact, that the government can do better. Now, I know it's not popular to say in some circles that government can do better than private things, but I'll give you the example of the post office, which is a good one. It's just not a profitable business for the post office to say deliver into small cities. If it ran like a business, they just wouldn't go there at all. But there's some services that need to be done by the government. In terms of large scale infrastructure design, yeah, there's certain things the government can do that private businesses can't. Again, this is all about delivering services to people, not necessarily just trying to profit as best you can. So going into 2025, what can we expect from the market? So the market's actually been doing pretty good the last couple of years. You guys know a lot of it's been driven by AI hype. I believe we have NVIDIA earnings coming on Wednesday, so we'll see if we can keep that momentum going. One of the big concerns, obviously, then is the volatility and the uncertainty of the policies going forward, right? The tariffs, the deregulations, what's going to happen with that. what's going to happen with the Fed. Are they cutting or not? So the early estimates are the Fed isn't going to cut as much as expected before. And Wall Street analysts are starting to downward revise some of the earning estimates going forward. Now, typically, the way that you price stocks is like, okay, what's the price of stocks compared to how much companies earn? At the moment, we're trading at like a 22 forward earnings. Historically, it's more around 18. So we're trading awfully high. And then if you got all these Trump inflationary policies coming into place, chances are earnings aren't going to be so rosy. Now, that's essentially, my prediction of what's going on into the future. But obviously, we're going to track this together as we go into 2025. Another thing to track in the markets is what is the billionaire class doing? And I can tell you, Jeff Bezos has been selling Amazon stock. He sold about 25 million shares, which adds up to about $5.1 billion. So yes, it's a lot. He still has a whole bunch of more Amazon shares to sell, but he's actually selling earlier than expected. So before, what he did, he filed like a stock selling plan and saying, hey, I have till the end of 2025 to sell my 25 million shares. But he finished that early, and rumor has it that perhaps in the Amazon's next earnings report, he may file yet another sort of way, or plan, I should say, to sell yet more shares. We'll see. But essentially, he's selling. We also know Warren Buffett has been selling tons of stock, be it Apple, be it Bank of America. And Warren Buffett is sitting on record piles of cash. So that's what those two billionaires are doing. And I think it's important to sort of track that along with what's going on in the market. And you have to deal with Trump's crazy cabinet picks. We've already talked about the Fox News guy, the Matt Gaetz guy. And now we have Robert Kennedy Jr. being nominated for Health and Human Services. If you don't know anything about him, basically he's a conspiracy theory guy, spreads all kinds of crazy theories. He's an anti-vaxxer. He wants to dismantle the FDA, and it just has a lot of people on edge because it's so much uncertainty. So healthcare stocks were taking a dive. I guess theoretically you could short those kind of things, but again, it's really, really risky. I don't think those kind of companies are necessarily going to go out of business. Like we still need, obviously we need food, and we need healthcare stocks, but just the environment that we're in right now, we just don't know. And for a lot of people, instead of like, trying to wade through the uncertainty, they're rather just, okay, I'm just going to cash out and reduce my risk. And also, too, another risk of the markets going to 2025, what is the relationship between US and China? So Trump likes to call himself tariff man, and this is a quote from Trump. To me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff, and it's my favorite word. So he's all about tariffs, and the talk's been maybe tariffs as high as 60% on Chinese goods, and maybe as high as 20% on other goods from other countries. Now, there's a couple caveats with this when we talk about tariffs. So one would be whatever sort of agreement that they make, they say, okay, I'm going to put 60% tariffs on you, China, unless you start buying some of our goods. Now, China could say, yes, we'll buy some of your goods, please lower the tariffs, but then they could end up not buying said goods. This has happened before, so basically they can back out on the deal. The USA could also back out on whatever deal. So for example, Trump has said, hey, I'm going to be really, really tough on Mexico if you try to reroute, your trade into Mexico to try to get around the tariffs. And then the thing is, if Trump does that, they may actually break some of his promises that he made in his first term regarding trade of Mexico, right? So there's that. China could also try to reroute their trade to other countries like, say, Korea or Canada, and then get goods into the USA that way. That is a thing to look out for because from the Trump point of view and his followers, he can say, yeah, I'm tough on China. Look at the tariffs. I'm tough on China. And then again, China would reroute the trade through a third party or a third country. And then the Trump people would know what's happening, but just not say anything. So you'd win points politically, and also too, you would still maintain trade. Now, whether or not they let that happen, I don't know. I'm just saying that's something to be looking out for. And the other thing too you want to be thinking about is China could just be like, you know what? We don't need you anymore, USA. We can trade with Europe. We can trade with other parts of Asia. We can trade with, Africa. We can trade with Latin America. So we don't need USA so much. And that would essentially put USA further and further into, isolation. And that would definitely hurt American markets, right? Because remember, for American, markets essentially to go up, we want to see companies are earning more money. And if the trade just isn't there like it was in the past, that would certainly put a hampering on the market. So with the Trump tariffs on China next year looming, you may see a lot of companies start to front load and order a bunch of stuff now. Essentially, you want to get your orders in before the tariffs hit. And actually, I've seen members of the community also mention that kind of thing. Just like, well, if I know these tariffs are going to happen, I'm starting to buy my iPhones now, my cars now, or whatever, right? Because a lot of stuff actually does come from China. And I mentioned before on the channel that, say, the tariffs do hit, there is a possibility that your iPhone could go up in cost by $200, $300. And iPhone is not the only product. You could see several products go up in price. Essentially, that's why Trump's policies would be inflationary, because we get so many goods from China, and not just from China, from other countries around the world. Because remember, this tariff plan from Trump is not just China; it's all countries. The other issue as well is, even if companies do front load, their orders from China, and try to get a bunch of stuff in early to get ahead of the tariffs, it wouldn't necessarily last forever, because they're not going to just go ahead and order, 3 years worth of goods, right? They may order maybe 6 months or a year, something like that. And then what if happens that the economy slows? Then you have companies like stuck with all this inventory that have nothing to do with. That actually happened in the pandemic. A bunch of companies like, say, Target, Walmart, these kind of things, they ordered a bunch of bicycles because people wanted a bunch of bicycles during the pandemic, and there was a shortage, so they put a bunch of orders in. The orders finally arrived, and then they had too much stuff, and then they had the discount and said things. They ended up taking a loss on it. So front loading isn't always a great thing, especially because, again, you're trying to predict what's going to happen in the future. And, we have all this uncertainty going into 2025. So as you can see, there's a bunch of uncertainty going into next year, 2025. And investors are always like, okay, so tell me the bottom line. Where do I put my money? Number one, I'll just say, do what makes sense for you. But I always give you general advice, which I think is always useful. So one, pay off your debts. That's never necessarily a bad idea. Number two, if you want to put your money in the market, there's a couple ways you can think about. So one would be just get S&P 500 index funds that covers your full base. You're not stressing out about, oh, what's RFK doing with healthcare stocks, or is the AI rally, is that over? You're essentially investing broadly, and so if some things will go up, some things will go down that particular year, you don't have to stress out about that. You're just going to do what market does. If you want to go a little bit more safer than that, you can do a balanced index fund. So that'll basically allocate stocks and bonds, and be it a 70-30 or a 60-40, meaning 60 stocks, 40% bonds, or 70% stocks, 30% bonds. And these things are already taken care of for you. If you want to do it yourself, you can totally do that. Buy treasuries yourself, be it 5-year, 10-year, etc. But one thing that a lot of people are doing right now is just like, you know what? I'm standing pat. I'm not necessarily buying at all-time levels. The thing is that right now, stocks are basically all-time highs. We have a bunch of uncertainty going into 2025. I personally don't see that, companies are going to have record-breaking earnings keep going forward. It just seems highly unlikely. The other issue as well, which I'm looking at, is what's going to happen with, say, Christmas. And essentially, this is sort of what we track all the time. Are people shopping? Are people not? The early indicators are that retail is doing okay, meaning that the money is still flowing. But we'll know more come December, when we get, basically Christmas earnings, and the people say, hey, yes, people are still shopping, record sales or whatever, or, man, no one's shopping, and, things are looking really grim. But this is essentially what a market is, right? You're trying to gauge what, all the things put together. What does it mean? What's economic policy from the Fed? What is the political policy coming from the coming in administration, be it Trump or whatever? And also too, how consumers respond to said things. And then you have also the global concerns around the world, be it war in Ukraine or war in the Middle East. But this is why we share all this stuff together, and I enjoy hanging out with you as we navigate this stuff together. So thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.